The chamber is open and full of whispers.
What if the boy who lived had been raised not by those who hated magic, but by someone who hated himself? What if Harry Potter's childhood had been shaped not by cupboards and cruelty, but by books and a man who transformed into a monster every full moon? What if the gentlest of the marauders, the one who considered himself least worthy, had been the one to raise James Potter's son? This is that story. Not a simple tale of a happier childhood, but something more complex. A story about a werewolf teaching a child that monsters are made, not born. About a man who believed himself unworthy of love, learning that love isn't about deserving, it's about choosing. This is the story of how Remus Lupin became a father. Early 1982. The failing protection. Albus Dumbledore stood in the Dursleys' garden at 4 Privet Drive, invisible beneath a disillusionment charm, and felt the blood protection magic flickering like a candle in the wind. This should not be happening. The bond of blood charm he'd cast 3 months ago had been intricate, powerful, anchored in Lily Potter's sacrifice and sealed by Petunia Dursley's acceptance of Harry into her home. The magic should have been ironclad, creating a sanctuary that no dark wizard could penetrate as long as Harry could call this place home. But the magic was faltering, and Dumbledore knew why. Through the kitchen window he could see Petunia moving about with mechanical precision, her face pinched with disgust. In the corner, barely visible, sat a playpen containing 15-month-old Harry Potter. The child was too quiet, too still. Infants were supposed to babble, to reach for things, to demand attention. Harry did none of these things. He simply sat, green eyes dull, watching nothing. Dumbledore had seen this before, in children raised in the worst Muggle orphanages. Failure to thrive, the healers called it. When an infant received no affection, no warmth, no sense of being wanted, they simply faded. The blood protection required Petunia to accept Harry. She had done so, grudgingly, furiously, unwillingly, bitterly, but she had said the words that sealed the charm. He can stay. But magic responded to genuine intent, not surface compliance. Petunia viewed Harry as a curse upon her home. She fed him, changed him, kept him physically alive, and gave him nothing else. No touch beyond necessity. No words beyond commands. No acknowledgement that he was a child rather than an obligation. And Harry, treated as vermin, could not form the psychic anchor of home that the protection required. The charm was dying because the child was dying, emotionally if not physically. Dumbledore had placed Harry here believing it was the only way to keep him safe. Now he faced a choice. Allow the protection to collapse entirely, or find an alternative. He apparated to a tumble-down, semi-derelict cottage in Yorkshire. The proposition: Remus Lupin was starving. Not metaphorically. Actually starving. The last of James Potter's money, the stipend that had kept Remus fed and housed since Hogwarts, had died with James. 3 months of searching for work had yielded nothing. No employer would keep a worker who fell mysteriously ill every month and returned covered in unexplained injuries. The cottage, his mother's before she died, was falling apart. The roof leaked. The windows were cracked. The cellar where Remus transformed each full moon was the only room with functional wards. And even those were degrading. He was 22 years old, a werewolf, unemployed, and utterly alone. When Albus Dumbledore appeared in his sitting room without warning, Remus's first thought was that he was hallucinating from hunger. "Remus," Dumbledore said gently, "we need to talk about Harry." Remus went very still. What about Harry? He'd thought about Harry constantly since November 1st. James's son, Lily's son. The child Remus should have protected and failed to protect, because he'd been in the North on order business when Voldemort struck. The child now living with Lily's sister, safe behind blood wards Remus could never provide. "The protection is failing," Dumbledore said. "Harry is not thriving with the Dursleys." Petunia's acceptance was insufficient. The magic requires Harry to be able to call Privet Drive home, and he cannot. He is 15 months old and already shows signs of severe neglect. Remus's hands clenched. "Then move him. Find someone else. There is no one else who can provide the blood protection. Petunia is Lily's only living blood relative." Dumbledore paused. "But I can modify the charm. Instead of requiring permanent residence, Harry could return to the Dursleys for 2 weeks each summer. That would satisfy the once-per-year requirement and maintain the protection, albeit in a weakened form." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I believe you should raise Harry, Remus." Remus laughed. a bitter, hollow sound. I'm a werewolf. I'm unemployed. I live in a cottage that's barely standing. I transform into a monster once a month. What part of that makes me suitable to raise a child? The part where you are brilliant, patient, and kind. The part where you would die before you let harm come to James Potter's son. Dumbledore's blue eyes were piercing. You are exactly who should raise Harry, if you believe yourself worthy. I don't. That's why you'll accept my conditions. Dumbledore sat in the cottage's single intact chair. I will arrange for a portion of Harry's vault at Gringotts to fund his upbringing. You will administer it. I will help restore this cottage to livability and create a secure transformation space. During full moons, a woman named Arabella Figg will watch Harry. She is a squib, trustworthy, and already monitoring the Dursley situation. The Wolfsbane potion, Remus began, is still experimental and prohibitively expensive. I cannot provide regular access. Some months I may be able to arrange a supply. Most months you will transform as you always have, but in a warded cellar, with Harry safely elsewhere. Dumbledore's voice was firm. This will not be easy, Remus. Raising a child never is. Raising James Potter's child while managing your condition will be extraordinarily difficult. But I believe you can do it. More importantly, I believe you should. Remus looked around his cottage, at the peeling wallpaper, the cracked windows, the evidence of his own failure to maintain even his own life, let alone someone else's. Why me? He whispered. Why not Sirius? Dumbledore's expression darkened. Sirius Black betrayed Lily and James to Voldemort. He is in Azkaban, where he belongs. Sirius would never. He was their secret keeper. Only the secret keeper could have revealed their location. Peter Pettigrew died trying to stop him. The evidence is irrefutable. Dumbledore stood. Sirius is gone, Remus. You are all Harry has left. Will you take him? His best friend, who'd spent 7 years making sure Remus wasn't alone during full moons, who'd learned to become an animagus just to keep him company, who'd supported him financially when no one else would hire a werewolf. James, who'd trusted Remus enough to make him godfather to his son before switching to Sirius at the last moment. James, who was dead because Remus hadn't been there to protect him. Yes, Remus said. I'll take him. The first year, Harry came to the cottage on a cold February morning in 1982. Mrs. Figg drove him from Privet Drive in her ancient car. Dumbledore had arranged everything with the Dursleys. They'd been only too happy to be rid of the freak child for most of the year, as long as he returned for 2 weeks each summer, to maintain the blood protection. Remus waited by the cottage door, heart pounding. He'd spent 2 weeks cleaning, repairing. Dumbledore had helped restore the structure, fixed the roof, sealed the windows, reinforced the cellar wards. The cottage wasn't luxurious, but it was livable. Mrs. Figg handed Harry over without ceremony. Poor Mite hasn't said a word the whole drive. Dursley said he barely cries anymore. Harry was small for 15 months, with a lightning bolt scar on his forehead and the dullest green eyes Remus had ever seen. He held the child awkwardly. Remus had no experience with infants, and felt Harry go rigid in his arms. It's all right, Remus said softly. You're safe now. I'm Remus. His voice caught. I'm going to take care of you. Harry stared at him without expression. That first night, Remus put Harry in the crib Dumbledore had conjured and stood watching the child sleep. Harry didn't cry for attention, didn't reach for comfort. Just lay there, silent and still. I don't know how to do this, Remus whispered to the empty room. James, I don't know how to be a father, but he would learn. He had to learn. The first months were brutally difficult. Harry was withdrawn, unresponsive, clearly traumatized by his time with the Dursleys. Remus had no idea how to reach him. He fed Harry, changed him, kept him warm and clean, and received nothing in return. No smiles, no babbling, no recognition. Remus read every book on child development he could find, learned that neglected infants needed consistent affection, routine, and patience. So he provided those things, even when Harry remained blank and unresponsive. He held Harry while reading aloud, not children's books, but the books Remus himself loved, poetry, history, literature. Harry didn't understand the words, but he heard Remus's voice, calm and steady. He established routines, meals at the same time each day, naps in the same pattern, bedtime stories every night. The predictability seemed to help. Harry began watching Remus with something approaching interest. The full moons were agony. Mrs. Fig would collect Harry in the afternoon before moonrise. Remus would descend to the cellar, chain himself to the wall, and wait for the transformation. The wolf raged against confinement, howled its fury at being trapped, and tore at its own flesh when it couldn't escape. Remus would wake the next morning covered in self-inflicted wounds, exhausted and sick, knowing Harry was with a stranger while his guardian turned into a monster. But Mrs. Fig was patient and kind. She returned Harry each time unharmed. And slowly, so slowly, Remus almost didn't notice, Harry began to change. At 18 months, Harry smiled for the first time. Remus had been making exaggerated faces while changing Harry's nappy, not expecting any reaction, when Harry's mouth curved upward. It lasted only a second, but Remus saw it. He burst into tears, sat on the floor of the cottage and cried like he hadn't cried since James died, because this tiny person was beginning to heal, and that meant Remus was doing something right. At 20 months, Harry said his first word, Mus. Not quite Remus, but close enough. Remus had been reading aloud the tales of Beetle the Bard when Harry interrupted with the sound. Remus looked down at the toddler in his lap, hardly daring to hope. Say it again? Mus, Harry repeated, reaching for Remus's face with tiny hands. Yes, Remus whispered, pulling Harry closer. Yes, I'm Mus. I'm your Mus. At 2 years old, Harry took his first independent steps across the cottage sitting room. Remus caught him when he stumbled, and Harry laughed, a sound like music, like forgiveness, like proof that damaged children could still learn joy. Remus realized he was healing too, that raising Harry was forcing him to eat regularly, sleep on a schedule, maintain the cottage, and engage with the world beyond his own self-loathing. He couldn't afford to wallow in lycanthropic despair when a toddler needed him. James's money, administered through Gringotts, kept them fed and housed. It wasn't wealth, but it was enough. Remus felt guilty spending it, felt like he was accepting charity he didn't deserve. But Harry deserved food, clothes, books, and toys. So Remus swallowed his pride and used the money for Harry's sake. He also started taking freelance work, translating magical texts, tutoring students by correspondence, any job that could be done from home on his own schedule. The income was minimal, but it eased his guilt about using James's money. By Harry's 3rd birthday, the cottage felt like a home. Books lined every wall, children's stories mixed with Remus's academic texts, toys scattered across the floor. Harry's drawings stuck to the walls with permanent sticking charms because Remus couldn't bear to take them down. Harry was still small for his age, still quiet compared to other children, but the dullness had left his eyes. He laughed often. He asked endless questions. He followed Remus everywhere, a tiny shadow with messy black hair and his mother's green eyes. And Remus, who had never expected to be anyone's father, discovered he would die for this child. AG 5-7. The student Harry's education began early, though not formally. Remus simply lived his life, reading, researching, maintaining the cottage's wards. And Harry absorbed everything. At 5, Harry could identify 20 common magical creatures from illustrations, not because Remus drilled him, but because Harry loved looking at books while Remus worked. And Remus explained whatever Harry asked about. What's this one? Harry would ask, pointing at a picture. That's a Grindilo, water demon. Very dangerous if you're swimming in lakes or rivers. They have sharp little horns and very strong fingers. The trick is to break their grip quickly. They're not very persistent if you fight back. Have you seen one? Once, during my Hogwarts years, my friend James fell into the lake and a Grindilo grabbed his ankle. We had to pull him out. He was furious. Ruined his favorite shoes. Harry absorbed these stories like breathing. Remus's past became Harry's education. The Marauder's Adventures, edited for appropriateness. Defense against the Dark Arts Theory, Magical Creatures, The History of Wizarding Conflicts. Remus's teaching philosophy was practical. He didn't believe in rote memorization or abstract theory divorced from application. He taught Harry to think defensively, to assess situations, identify threats, prepare for contingencies. Why do we lock the doors at night? Remus would ask. Because someone might try to get in. And why do we check the locks twice? Because the first check might have missed something. Defensive magic isn't about being paranoid. It's about being thorough. You prepare for the things that probably won't happen, so that you're ready if they do. When they walked to the village for supplies, Remus taught Harry to observe their surroundings. Always know where the exits are. Always have a route to safety planned. Not because danger is certain, but because preparation makes you calm when danger does arrive. Harry learned the shield charm theory at age 6. Far too young to cast it, but Remus introduced the wand movements and incantation anyway, building muscle memory years before Harry would have a wand. Protego, Remus would say, demonstrating the sharp jab and twist. The word means I protect. The shield's strength depends on intent and magical power, but the form matters too. Practice the movement until it's instinctive. When you're in danger, you won't have time to think. You'll need your body to remember. Harry practiced with a stick jabbing and twisting until Remus nodded approval. At 7, Harry understood Patronus theory, not the casting. That required advanced skill and a wand, but the concept. Remus explained it during a quiet evening by the fireplace. The Patronus is powered by happiness, not general contentment, but a specific powerful memory. The happiest moment you can remember. Remus's voice was soft. It creates a shield against creatures like Dementors, which feed on despair. The magic recognizes that happiness is a weapon against darkness. What's your happiest memory? Harry asked. Remus smiled. The day I met your father. First year at Hogwarts. I was terrified. I was a werewolf, and I thought I'd be expelled immediately if anyone found out. James saw me sitting alone at the sorting feast, and sat down next to me. You look like you need a friend, he said. And he became my best friend for the next 16 years. Do you have a Patronus? I do. An incorporeal one. It's a shield of light without a specific animal form. I've never been powerful enough to create a full corporeal Patronus. Remus didn't mention that his Patronus had once been a wolf, and that the shape had brought him such shame he'd learned to suppress it into formlessness. Harry thought about this. When I learn magic, I'm going to make a corporeal Patronus. A really strong one. I believe you will. The summer visits to the Dursleys were the only shadow on Harry's childhood. Every July, Remus took Harry to Privet Drive for 2 weeks, the minimum required to maintain the blood protection. The Dursleys tolerated Harry's presence with barely concealed hostility. They'd had a second son, Dudley, who was spoiled and cruel. Dudley delighted in breaking Harry's things and pushing him down. Harry returned from each visit quiet and withdrawn, needing days to recover his usual energy. Remus hated sending him, but Dumbledore insisted the protection was necessary. Why do I have to go there? Harry asked when he was 7, after a particularly bad visit where Dudley had locked him in the cupboard under the stairs. Because your mother's magic protects you there, Remus explained. When Voldemort tried to kill you, your mother sacrificed herself to save you. That sacrifice created a protection in your blood. Your Aunt Petunia shares that blood. She's your mother's sister. As long as you return to her house once per year, the protection stays active. It keeps you safe from Voldemort's followers who might want to hurt you. Voldemort's dead, though. We think he is. But we're not certain. And even if he's truly gone, his followers remain. You're famous, Harry. The boy who lived. Some people would want to hurt you just because of what you represent. Remus knelt to Harry's level. I wish you didn't have to go to the Dursleys, but 2 weeks per year is better than living there permanently. And when you're 17, the protection expires, and you'll never have to see them again. 10 more years, Harry said glumly. 10 more years, Remus agreed. I'm sorry. Remus taught him to read Latin, to identify constellation patterns, to brew simple potions in the kitchen. They walked through the Yorkshire countryside, identifying magical and non-magical plants. Remus's mother had been Muggle, and he valued both worlds. He taught Harry about electricity and combustion engines, alongside transfiguration theory and potion ingredients. Magic is wonderful, Remus said, but it's not superior to Muggle innovation. It's just different. Never dismiss non-magical solutions, because you have magic. Sometimes the Muggle way is simpler and more effective. Harry absorbed this attitude. He grew up comfortable in both worlds, able to discuss Quidditch or cricket, wand cores or combustion with equal ease. And through it all, once per month, Harry stayed with Mrs. Fig while Remus transformed in the cellar. Age 8. The revelation. The conversation happened on a Thursday evening in March, 3 days before the full moon. Harry was 8 years old and not stupid. He'd noticed the patterns. Once a month, Remus became quiet and tense. He'd cancel lessons, send Harry to Mrs. Fig's house, and lock himself in the cellar. Harry would return the next morning to find Remus exhausted, pale, and covered in fresh bandages. Remus is ill, Mrs. Fig would explain. He needs to rest. But Harry had lived with Remus for 6 years. He knew Remus's habits, the way he checked locks twice, the way he positioned himself in rooms to always see the exits, the way he flinched at sudden sounds. These weren't the behaviors of someone randomly ill. They were the behaviors of someone managing a condition. Harry had also noticed that Remus's illness followed the lunar cycle. He'd checked the calendar against the dates he stayed with Mrs. Fig, every 29 days, every full moon. He'd looked through Remus's books on magical creatures, found the section on werewolves, read about the monthly transformations, the danger to others, the stigma and discrimination. So on that Thursday evening, when Remus was preparing the cellar for the upcoming transformation, Harry asked, "You're a werewolf, aren't you?" It hit the stone floor with a clang that echoed through the cottage. He turned slowly to face Harry, his expression devastated. "Harry, it's okay," Harry said quickly. "I'm not scared. I figured it out. The full moons, the injuries, the way you lock yourself in the cellar. I found the books about werewolves. And it makes sense." Remus sat down heavily on the cellar stairs. His hands were shaking. "How long have you known?" Harry sat next to him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Remus's voice was barely audible. "Because I was terrified you'd be afraid of me. Because I thought if you knew the truth, that you were living with a monster, you'd want to leave." "You're not a monster. Harry, I transform into a wolf that would tear you apart if it got free. That's the definition of a monster." "No, it's the definition of someone with a dangerous medical condition." Harry's voice was matter-of-fact. "You don't choose to transform. You take precautions to keep everyone safe. You lock yourself in a warded cellar every month even though it hurts. That's not monstrous. That's responsible." Remus was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. "You really aren't afraid?" "Of course I'm not afraid. You've been taking care of me since I was a baby. You've never hurt me. You've taught me everything I know. You check the locks twice to make sure I'm safe. You're—" Harry's voice caught. "You're my family, Remus. You being a werewolf doesn't change that." He sobbed like a child, shoulders shaking, making sounds of grief and relief Harry had never heard from him before. Harry held him awkwardly. He'd never seen Remus lose control like this. But he understood. Remus had spent his entire life expecting rejection, expecting that anyone who learned his secret would leave. And Harry, the person Remus loved most in the world, had just told him it didn't matter. When Remus finally stopped crying, he pulled back and looked at Harry with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you. You have no idea, Harry. You have no idea what that means to me." "I think I do," Harry said quietly. "You've been alone for a long time, but you're not alone anymore. You have me, and I'm not going anywhere." They sat in silence for a long time. The cellar door opened behind them, the chains waiting for the transformation that would come in 3 days. Finally, Remus spoke. "I should tell you the whole story, about how I was bitten, about what it's like, about the wolfsbane potion and why I don't have regular access to it. You deserve to understand what you're living with." Harry nodded. "Okay." Remus told him everything. How he'd been bitten at age 5 by Fenrir Greyback, a savage werewolf who targeted children out of spite. How he'd grown up isolated, his parents terrified of what he'd become. How Dumbledore had allowed him to attend Hogwarts despite the risks creating the Shrieking Shack transformation space. How James, Sirius, and Peter had become animagi to keep him company during transformations. "James turned into a stag," Remus said softly. "Sirius was a massive dog. Peter was a rat. They called themselves Padfoot, Prongs, and Wormtail. I was Moony. We were the Marauders." His voice hardened. "And then Sirius betrayed your parents to Voldemort. Peter died trying to stop him. And I was alone again." "How do you know Sirius betrayed them?" "Because he was their secret keeper. Only the secret keeper could have revealed their location to Voldemort. When Peter confronted him, Sirius killed him along with 12 muggles. He's in Azkaban now, where he belongs." Remus's voice was bitter. "I trusted him. Your father trusted him, and he destroyed everything." Harry absorbed this. He'd known his parents were dead, killed by Voldemort, but Remus rarely spoke about the details. Now he understood the full weight of Remus's grief. Betrayed by his best friend, left alone to raise his best friend's son. "I'm glad you have me," Harry said. Remus smiled, tired but genuine. "So am I. More than you know." From that night forward, their relationship changed. No more secrets about the lycanthropy. Harry knew when the full moon was coming and helped Remus prepare, checking the cellar wards, making sure the chains were secure, staying with Mrs. Fig without complaint. When Remus returned from transformations exhausted and injured, Harry would help bandage the wounds, bring him tea, and sit quietly nearby while Remus recovered. "I hate that you have to see this," Remus said once, as Harry applied Dittany to claw marks across Remus's shoulder. "I hate that you go through it alone," Harry replied. "At least now I know. At least I can help." The revelation became their defining moment. Remus, who had spent his life expecting rejection, discovered that unconditional love was possible. Harry learned that the people you love can be dangerous through no fault of their own, and that love means accepting the danger. It fundamentally shaped how Harry would later respond to prejudice, outcasts, and those the wizarding world deemed monsters. Age 9 to 10, the Hermione connection. In the summer of 1989, when Harry was 9, Remus received an unusual job offer. Arabella Fig had mentioned him to a ministry contact who worked in the Muggle-born liaison office. The ministry had a quiet program for introducing magic to Muggle families, whose children displayed accidental magic before their Hogwarts letters arrived. These families needed someone to explain the wizarding world, someone educated, non-threatening, and able to answer endless questions. Remus, despite being a werewolf, was perfect for the work. He was brilliant, patient, and genuinely valued both magical and Muggle culture. The ministry offered freelance contracts, visit families, explain magic, provide guidance, get paid per consultation. Remus accepted. The income helped, but more importantly, it gave him purpose beyond raising Harry. It also gave Harry something he desperately needed: exposure to other children. The Grangers hired Remus in late July 1989. Their daughter Hermione, 10 years old, had levitated a book during an argument with her parents about whether she could stay up late reading. The book had shot across the room and embedded itself in the ceiling. The Grangers, both dentists, both deeply rational, had no framework for processing what they'd witnessed. Remus arrived at their comfortable suburban home in London with Harry in tow. He'd learned that bringing Harry helped families relax. A child made the strange man explaining magic seem less threatening. Mr. and Mrs. Granger answered the door looking terrified and hopeful simultaneously. "Mr. Lupin," Mrs. Granger said, "please, come in. Thank you for coming so quickly." Hermione sat in the living room, surrounded by books, looking both fascinated and frightened. She was small for her age, with bushy brown hair and very large front teeth. When she saw Remus and Harry, her eyes widened. "Hello, Hermione," Remus said gently, sitting across from her. "My name is Remus Lupin. This is my son, Harry. We're here to explain what's been happening to you." "I made a book fly. That's not normal. You're not a freak. You're a witch." Remus smiled at her expression. "I know that sounds strange, but magic is real, Hermione. You have magical ability. What happened with the book was accidental magic. It happens when young witches and wizards experience strong emotions. It's completely normal for people like you. You're what we call Muggle-born, a witch born to non-magical parents. It's not uncommon. Some of the most brilliant witches in history have been Muggle-born." Remus pulled a book from his bag, A Beginner's Guide to the Wizarding World. "When you turn 11, you'll receive a letter inviting you to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. That's where young magical people learn to control and develop their abilities." Hermione grabbed the book and began reading immediately. Remus glanced at Harry, who was watching Hermione with interest. "You're reading very quickly," Harry observed. "I like reading," Hermione said defensively, not looking up from the page. "Me too. What's your favorite subject?" "But especially history and literature. Though I suppose magical history is different from regular history." She finally looked up at Harry. "Are you a wizard?" "Right now I'm just learning theory." "What kind of theory?" Harry launched into an explanation of shield charm mechanics. Hermione listened with the intense focus of someone encountering a new intellectual frontier. Within minutes, they were debating whether intent or form mattered more in defensive magic, a debate neither of them had the expertise to resolve, but both enjoyed having. Remus watched them with quiet satisfaction. Harry had never had a peer to talk to about magic. Hermione had never had someone who didn't find her intensity off-putting. "Mr. and Mrs. Granger," Remus said, "if you're amenable, I'd like to offer extended tutoring for Hermione. The ministry contract covers initial introduction, but I also take private students. Meeting weekly until she receives her Hogwarts letter would help her prepare and give her someone to ask questions as they arise." "Is that necessary?" Mr. Granger asked. "Necessary? No. But I think it would benefit Hermione. Learning your magical can be isolating, especially for Muggle-born children. Having a tutor and a peer, he nodded toward Harry and Hermione, still debating, can make the transition easier. The Grangers agreed immediately. They wanted their daughter to have every advantage, and so Hermione Granger became a fixture in Harry Potter's life. The weekly lessons. Every Saturday afternoon, the Grangers drove Hermione to the cottage in Yorkshire. She would spend 3 hours with Remus and Harry, learning magical theory, history, and culture. Remus taught them together, and a competitive dynamic emerged immediately. Hermione memorized faster. She could recite entire passages from Hogwarts, a history verbatim. Harry grasped defensive applications more instinctively. He understood how spells functioned in combat situations. The stunning spell incantation is stupefy, Hermione would say, reading from a textbook. It renders the target unconscious. The wand movement is a jab forward. But you need to account for distance and the target's movement, Harry would add. If they're running, you need to lead the spell. Aim where they'll be, not where they are. And you should always follow a stunner with a full-body bind, in case they wake up unexpectedly. How do you know that? Defensive magic isn't just about knowing spells. It's about thinking tactically. She started asking different questions. Not just, what is this spell? But, when would you use this spell? And, what are the vulnerabilities? The friendly rivalry made both of them better students. Harry learned to be more thorough because Hermione never missed details. Hermione learned to think practically because Harry always asked, but what would you actually do in that situation? Harry, who had been socially isolated, was learning to argue, compromise, and collaborate. Hermione, who had always been the smartest person in any room, and thus alone, was finding someone who could keep up with her. They also fought, of course. Harry thought Hermione was too rigid about rules. Hermione thought Harry was too willing to take shortcuts. They had a massive argument about whether breaking a minor rule to achieve a good outcome was justified. Rules exist for a reason, Hermione insisted. You can't just ignore them because they're inconvenient. Some rules are stupid, Harry shot back. The Ministry has rules about werewolves that are completely unjust. Should Remus follow those rules even though they're wrong? Hermione faltered. She'd met Remus monthly for a year and adored him. The idea that he was legally classified as a dangerous creature seemed absurd. That's different. How? That's not fair. You're using an emotional example. I'm using a real example. Rules aren't automatically right just because they're rules. You have to think about whose rules they are and why they exist. Remus, listening from the kitchen, smiled. Harry was absorbing the lessons about questioning authority. Hermione was learning that rules were tools, not moral absolutes. By the time Harry turned 10 in July 1990, Hermione had been visiting weekly for a year. She was as much a part of the cottage as the books and the wards and the cellar chains. And crucially, Remus had explained his lycanthropy to her. It happened during a lesson about magical creatures. Hermione was reading about werewolves, their transformation cycles, their dangerousness, the Ministry regulations governing them. This is horrible, Hermione said. It says werewolves have to register with the Ministry and are banned from most employment. That's discrimination. It is, Remus said quietly. I'm a werewolf, Hermione. I know exactly how horrible it is. Hermione stared at him. But you're not dangerous. I transform into a wolf that would kill anyone it encountered. That's why I lock myself in the cellar during full moons. Why Harry stays with Mrs. Fig. Why I can't hold regular employment. Remus's voice was steady. The Ministry regulations are unjust in many ways. They make it nearly impossible for werewolves to live normal lives. But the core concern, that we're dangerous during transformations, is valid. We are dangerous. The question is whether we should be punished for a condition we didn't choose. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. And you'll encounter many unfair realities in the wizarding world. The question is, do you accept them, or do you work to change them? I'll change them, Hermione said immediately. Good. Then you're already thinking like someone who will make a difference. The revelation didn't change Hermione's opinion of Remus at all. If anything, she became more fiercely loyal. This man who'd been kind to her, who'd treated her intelligence as an asset rather than a quirk, who'd given her the tools to understand magic, was systematically oppressed by unjust laws. Hermione Granger was 10 years old when she decided to fight werewolf discrimination. It would shape her activism for the rest of her life. Age 11. The letter on July 31st, 1991. Harry Potter woke to find an owl perched on his windowsill. He'd been expecting this. Remus had explained that Hogwarts letters arrived on the recipient's 11th birthday. But seeing the actual envelope, thick parchment, emerald green ink, addressed to Mr. H. Potter, the second bedroom, Lupin Cottage, Yorkshire, made it real. His hands shook as he opened it. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Remus appeared in the doorway, already dressed despite the early hour. Your letter arrived. I'm going to Hogwarts. You are. Remus's smile was proud and sad simultaneously. James would be so proud of you, Harry. So would Lily. James, the talented troublemaker who became brave enough to die wandless defending his family. Lily, the brilliant muggle-born who saw past James's arrogance to the good person underneath. They felt real to Harry in a way they never could have if he'd grown up with the Dursleys. Do you think they'd like who I've become? Harry asked. I think they'd love who you've become. You have James's courage and Lily's kindness. You think before acting, which neither of them did consistently. You value learning, which Lily championed and James eventually embraced. Remus's voice caught. You're the best of both of them, Harry, and you're entirely yourself. They would be so proud. 3 days later, Hermione's letter arrived. She immediately flew to the cottage. Her parents had installed a Flu connection specifically for this purpose, to show Remus and Harry. I'm going to Hogwarts, she announced, brandishing her letter. I'm really going. I've already started making a reading list. There are so many books I should review before term starts. Hermione, Remus interrupted gently. You've been preparing for 2 years. You're ready, but what if I'm not? What if everyone else knows more than me? What if I'm behind because I'm Muggle-born? You won't be behind, Harry said. You'll probably be ahead of most students in theory, and anyone who has a problem with you being Muggle-born is an idiot. Harry's right, Remus added. Hermione, you're one of the most brilliant students I've ever taught. You'll do exceptionally well at Hogwarts. My only concern is that you'll work yourself into exhaustion trying to prove something you've already proven. Hermione relaxed slightly. I suppose I am rather prepared. Rather? Harry grinned. You've memorized half our textbooks already. Only the theory-heavy ones. I still need to practice wand movements. With actual wands. That you'll get in Diagon Alley next week. Remus stood. Speaking of which, both of you need to prepare your school supply lists. We'll make a day of it. Diagon Alley, Gringotts, Ollivanders. The full experience. Harry and Hermione exchanged excited looks. They'd both read about Diagon Alley for years. Now they'd actually see it. The reality of Hogwarts was finally arriving. And Harry, raised by a werewolf in a cottage full of books, and defensive wards, and unconditional love, was ready. Diagon Alley. August 15th, 1991. Harry stood with Remus and Hermione outside the Leaky Cauldron, staring at the shabby pub that served as the gateway to the wizarding world's commercial heart. The Grangers had dropped Hermione off that morning, trusting Remus to guide both children through their school shopping. Ready? Remus asked, his hand resting lightly on Harry's shoulder. Harry nodded. He'd heard stories about Diagon Alley his entire life. Remus's descriptions of bookshops and apothecaries, of Ollivanders and Flourish and Blots, but seeing it would be different. They walked through the pub. The barman, Tom, nodded at Remus with the careful neutrality reserved for known werewolves. Remus nodded back, his expression neutral, and led Harry and Hermione to the brick wall in the courtyard. 3 up, 2 across, Remus murmured, tapping the bricks with his wand in the required pattern. The wall opened, and Diagon Alley revealed itself. Harry had expected to feel wonder. He felt it, but underneath was something more complex, the realization that this world which he'd studied so thoroughly was real. The shops with their impossible displays, the witches and wizards in robes of every color, the owls swooping between buildings delivering post. Hermione gasped. It's exactly like the books described, but also completely different. Because books can't capture the magic, Remus said. Come on, Gringotts first. The white marble building loomed at the end of the street. They climbed the steps and entered the vast hall lined with goblin tellers. Harry had read about goblins extensively, their role in wizarding finance, their rebellions throughout history, the careful peace maintained through mutual benefit rather than trust. Mr. Lupin, the goblin at their counter said. His black eyes assessed them shrewdly. And young Mr. Potter, I presume? We've been expecting you. I need to access the vault designated for Harry's school expenses, Remus said, and Mr. Potter needs his own key for Vault 687. The goblin consulted his ledger. Vault 687. Yes. The Potter family vault. Quite substantial. You'll need to provide blood verification, Mr. Potter. Harry pricked his finger on the ceremonial knife and watched his blood form the words on parchment. Harry James Potter, son of James Potter, and Lily Potter, née Evans, heir to the most ancient and noble house of Potter. Everything is in order, the goblin said, handing Harry a small golden key. Your vault has been untouched since your parents' deaths. No withdrawals, no visitors. The contents remain exactly as Lord and Lady Potter left them. Something in Harry's chest tightened. His parents had accumulated this wealth. They'd never gotten to use it for him. The cart ride deep into Gringotts was exhilarating. Hermione gripped the sides of the cart tightly, her bushy hair whipping behind her. Harry felt the thrill of speed and danger. Controlled danger because Gringotts wouldn't let customers die in cart accidents. But danger nonetheless. Vault 687 opened to reveal piles of gold galleons, silver sickles, and bronze nuts. More wealth than Harry had imagined. Mountains of coins gleaming in the torchlight. This is yours, Remus said quietly. James and Lily left it for you. For your education, your future, your life. Don't feel guilty using it, Harry. They'd want you to have it. Harry filled the bag Remus handed him with coins, his mind trying to process what this meant. Financial security? Freedom from worry about Remus using James's money. Now Harry could contribute properly to the household. The ability to buy books, supplies, anything he needed for his education. Can I? Harry stopped. Can I pay you back for raising me? All the money you've spent? No, Remus said firmly. Harry, that money was never about debt. Raising you was never about obligation. You're my son. That's all you'll ever be. With the cottage expenses, with food, we'll discuss household contributions when you're older. For now, this money is for your education and your needs. Remus's voice softened. I appreciate the offer, Harry. It shows the kind of person you're becoming. But you don't owe me anything. They withdrew money for both Harry and Hermione's school supplies. Hermione's parents had provided Muggle money to exchange, and returned to the surface. Next stop, Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Harry was being fitted when another boy entered. Pale, pointed face, sleek blonde hair, gray eyes that assessed Harry with calculating interest. Hogwarts? The boy asked. Yes, Harry said. Me too. First year. My father's next door buying my books. The boy said this like it should be impressive. I'm Draco Malfoy. Harry had heard the name Malfoy from Remus. Old, pure-blood family, wealthy, with suspected Death Eater connections that were never proven. Lucius Malfoy had claimed the Imperious Curse defense and walked free after Voldemort's fall. Harry Potter. Malfoy's eyes widened slightly. Really? I heard you were living with Muggles somewhere. The Dursleys. I visit the Dursleys for 2 weeks each summer. The rest of the year, I live with my guardian. Who's your guardian? Remus Lupin. Malfoy's expression flickered. Recognition and something else. Distaste, maybe. Or pity. The werewolf. My father mentioned him. Said it was tragic what happened to him. Harry's voice went cold. What happened to him was being bitten by Fenrir Greyback as a child. If your father finds that tragic, he should support legislation protecting werewolf rights instead of the discriminatory laws your family votes for. Malfoy blinked, clearly not expecting this response. That's not... Harry? Hermione's voice came from the doorway. She'd finished her fitting. Madame Malkin says you're done. Harry stepped off the platform, paid, and left without another word to Malfoy. Outside, Hermione looked at him curiously. Who was that? Draco Malfoy. Pure-blood supremacist family. Probably harmless, but definitely annoying. You got angry when he mentioned Remus. He was condescending about the lycanthropy. Like Remus is something to pity rather than respect. Harry's jaw was tight. I'm tired of people treating Remus like he's less than human because of a condition he didn't choose. Hermione squeezed his arm. You're a good son. I know what Remus deals with. The discrimination, the assumptions, the way people look at him when they find out. He doesn't deserve any of it. No, he doesn't. Which is why we're going to change it someday. They continued shopping. Flourish and blots for textbooks. Hermione bought additional reading. Naturally. The apothecary for potion ingredients. a shop specializing in educational supplies for a telescope and brass scales. Then, Ollivander's. The wand shop was narrow, dusty, piled floor to ceiling with long boxes containing wands. A bell rang somewhere as they entered. An old man materialized from the shadows, Mr. Ollivander, with pale eyes that seemed to see through skin. "Ah, yes," Ollivander said softly. "Harry Potter. I wondered when I'd be seeing you. And Miss Granger. Muggle-born, I perceive. How fascinating. How did you know I'm Muggle-born?" Hermione asked. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Miss Granger. And I remember every family, yours I've never encountered." Ollivander turned his unsettling gaze to Harry. "But you, Mr. Potter, your parents both purchased wands from me. Your mother's wand was 10¼ inches willow, with a unicorn hair core, swishy, excellent for charm work. Your father preferred mahogany, 11 inches with a dragon heartstring core, pliable, excellent for transfiguration." "Did you know them well?" Harry asked. "I knew their wands, which is often more illuminating than knowing the person." "Now, which is your wand arm?" Harry held out his right hand. The measuring tape sprang to life, measuring every conceivable dimension. Ollivander began pulling boxes, muttering to himself. "Try this. Beechwood and dragon heartstring, 9 inches. Flexible." Harry waved the wand. Nothing happened. Ollivander snatched it back immediately. "No, no, definitely not. Perhaps maple and phoenix feather, 7 inches. Quite whippy." Again, nothing. The pile of rejected wands grew. "Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry. We'll find the perfect match." Ollivander's eyes gleamed. "I wonder." He disappeared into the back of the shop, returning with a box covered in dust. "Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches. Nice and supple." Harry took the wand, and warmth flooded through him. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, like something that had always been missing had suddenly clicked into place. He raised the wand instinctively, and red and gold sparks shot from the tip, illuminating the dusty shop. "Oh, bravo!" Ollivander cried. Yes, yes, very good indeed, but most curious," Remus asked from where he stood near the door. Ollivander fixed Harry with an intense stare. "The phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave one other feather. Just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Harry's hand went automatically to his forehead, to the lightning bolt scar he'd carried since infancy. "Voldemort's wand and mine are brothers? 13½ inches, you, Phoenix Feathercore, the wand that performed terrible things, but great things nonetheless. And its brother has chosen you, Mr. Potter. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you." Harry left Ollivander's feeling unsettled. His wand and Voldemort's were connected. What did that mean? "It means the phoenix who gave those feathers saw something similar in you and Voldemort," Remus said carefully when Harry asked. "Potential for greatness. That potential can manifest as good or evil. The choice is yours, not the wand's. But why would the phoenix see anything similar between me and him? Because you both survived what should have killed you. You both have power that defies expectations. The difference is how you choose to use that power." Remus stopped walking, turned to face Harry directly. "You are not Voldemort, Harry. You will never be Voldemort. You have too much of your mother's love in you, too much kindness, too much awareness that other people matter. The wand chose you because you have potential. What you do with that potential is up to you." Harry nodded slowly, but the revelation lingered, uncomfortable and strange. Hermione's wand selection was faster, vine wood and dragon heartstring, 10¾ inches, flexible. "Perfect for charm work," Ollivander declared, just like her wand's strong intellectual affinity. They returned to the cottage that evening loaded with supplies, exhausted and exhilarated. Remus made dinner while Harry and Hermione sorted through their purchases, comparing textbooks and discussing which classes they were most excited about. "Defense against the dark arts, obviously," Harry said. "I've been learning theory for years. I want to actually practice." "I'm most interested in transfiguration," Hermione said. "The theory is fascinating, the idea that you can fundamentally change one thing into another by understanding its essential properties. That's very Ravenclaw of you. I might be in Ravenclaw. The hat might put me there. The hat put my parents in Gryffindor. It might put me there, too. Where do you think Remus was sorted?" "Gryffindor," Remus said without turning around. "All 4 marauders were. Were you happy there?" Harry asked. "Very happy. Your father, Sirius, Peter, and I, we were inseparable. Gryffindor was home. Remus's voice tightened on the last words. Until everything fell apart. Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. They both knew the story. Sirius's betrayal, Peter's death, the destruction of the Marauders. It was why Remus rarely spoke about his Hogwarts years in detail. But tomorrow, Harry and Hermione would begin their own Hogwarts years, and maybe they could build something that wouldn't fall apart. September 1st, the train platform 9 3/4 was chaos. Families saying goodbye, trunks being loaded onto the Hogwarts Express, owls hooting indignantly at the noise and commotion. Harry stood with Remus near the train's entrance, suddenly reluctant to board despite his excitement. He'd never been away from Remus for more than the 2 weeks at the Dursleys. Now he'd be gone for months. You're going to do brilliantly, Remus said, adjusting Harry's collar unnecessarily. You're prepared, you're intelligent, and you have Hermione. You'll be fine. What if something goes wrong? What if, Harry, I've taught you how to think defensively, how to assess threats, how to protect yourself and others. You have those skills. Trust them, Remus paused, and trust yourself. You're James and Lily's son. You're braver than you believe. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Just don't let it keep you from living. Remus pulled Harry into a hug. Write to me every week. Tell me about your classes, your friends, everything. And Harry, enjoy this. Hogwarts is magical in ways beyond the literal. Let yourself experience that. Harry hugged him back tightly. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. But you'll be home for Christmas before you know it. And I'll be here when you return. Remus pulled back, smiled. Now go. Hermione's already on the train, and probably saving you a compartment. Harry boarded the Hogwarts Express, found Hermione in a compartment halfway down the train, and settled in by the window. Remus stood on the platform, hands in his pockets, looking smaller and older than Harry had ever seen him. The train whistle blew. The engine began to move. Harry waved until Remus disappeared from view, then sat back, his chest tight with a mixture of excitement and homesickness. He'll be all right, Hermione said quietly. Mrs. Fig will check on him, and will write constantly. I know. It's just, I've never been away from him this long. You've been preparing for this for years. We both have. Hermione opened one of her textbooks. Now we get to actually do the magic instead of just reading about it. They'd been reading for perhaps 20 minutes when the compartment door slid open. A boy with red hair and freckles stood there, looking hopeful. Everywhere else is full. Mind if I sit? Go ahead, Harry said. The boy sat down across from them with obvious relief. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter. This is Hermione Granger. Ron's eyes went to Harry's scar. Blimey. You're really him? The boy who lived? That's what people call me, Harry said neutrally. I don't remember defeating Voldemort, though. I was 1 year old. Ron flinched at the name. You're not supposed to say you know whose name. It's just a name. Voldemort. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. That's from, Hermione checked her book, Dumbledore. He said that in an interview with the Daily Prophet in 1981. You memorized that? Ron looked impressed and slightly alarmed. Hermione memorizes everything, Harry said. It's her superpower. It's called studying. Same thing. You two already friends then? For 2 years, Hermione said. We've been studying together since before we knew we were coming to Hogwarts. Hermione's Muggle-born, Harry explained. My guardian tutored her when her accidental magic manifested. I joined the lessons. We've been learning together since. Who's your guardian? Ron asked. Everyone thought you lived with Muggles. I visit my Muggle relatives for 2 weeks each summer. The rest of the year, I live with Remus Lupin. The werewolf? Ron's eyes widened. My dad mentioned him once, said it was sad what happened to him. Harry's expression went cold. What happened to him was being bitten as a child. If your father finds that sad, perhaps he should support better werewolf legislation. Ron held up his hands. I didn't mean... I wasn't trying to insult him. I know. But people constantly pity Remus for his condition instead of recognizing that he's brilliant and kind and one of the best defense against the dark arts experts in Britain. The lycanthropy is a complication he manages. It's not who he is. Right. Sorry. Ron looked genuinely apologetic. I didn't think about it like that. Harry relaxed slightly. Ron seemed decent enough. Just thoughtless, not malicious. It's fine. I'm just protective of him. They talked for the rest of the journey. Ron was the youngest of 6 brothers, all of whom had attended or were currently attending Hogwarts. He was funny, easygoing, and fascinated by the Muggle world despite growing up entirely magical. "What's a rubber duck for?" Ron asked at one point. Hermione blinked. "It's a bath toy, for children. Why does it need to be rubber?" "So it floats, and doesn't hurt if you throw it." "Why would you throw it?" "Why wouldn't you?" Harry interjected. "That's the whole point of bath toys." Ron looked genuinely amazed. Muggles are brilliant. When they changed into their school robes, Harry noticed Ron's were slightly too short and clearly hand-me-downs. Ron noticed him noticing and flushed. "Yeah, we're not exactly wealthy. Everything I've got is second-hand." "Second-hand means it's been tested," Harry said. "You know it works. New things might break immediately." Ron grinned. "Never thought of it that way." The train slowed as they approached Hogsmeade Station. Through the window, Harry caught his first glimpse of Hogwarts Castle, massive stone towers rising against the darkening sky, windows glowing with light, impossibly large and ancient and magical. "It's real," Hermione breathed. "It's actually real," Ron said. "I know, but reading about it is different from seeing it. This is where we're going to spend the next 7 years. This is where we're going to learn actual magic. This is—" She stopped, eyes shining. "This is home now." Harry understood. The castle looked like every story Remus had ever told him about Hogwarts. But it was also new, unexplored, full of possibilities Remus's stories couldn't capture. They disembarked with the other first years. A massive man with a wild beard and kind eyes was calling for them. Fur's years over here." "That's Hagrid," Harry said. Remus mentioned him. "Keeper of keys and grounds." "Blimey, he's enormous," Ron muttered. They followed Hagrid down a steep path to the edge of a dark lake. Small boats waited. "4 to a boat," Hagrid called. Harry, Hermione, and Ron climbed into one boat. A round-faced boy clutching a toad joined them. "I'm Neville," the boy said nervously. "Neville Longbottom." Harry recognized the name immediately. Frank and Alice Longbottom, tortured into insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange and her husband. Their son had grown up visiting parents who didn't recognize him. Harry Potter. "This is Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley." "I know who you are," Neville said quietly. "Everyone does." The boats began moving across the lake. As they rounded a bend, Hogwarts came into full view, towers reaching toward the stars, the castle reflected in the lake's dark water, the sheer impossible scale of it. No one spoke. There was nothing to say that could match the sight. Harry thought of Remus, who'd walked these same halls, ridden these same boats, seen this same view for the first time 30 years ago. And he felt for the first time like he was following in footsteps that mattered. The sorting, Professor McGonagall met them in the entrance hall. She was exactly as Remus had described, stern, fair, intimidating, without being cruel. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said crisply. "In a few moments you will be sorted into your houses. Your house will be like your family while you're here. Your triumphs will earn house points. Your rule violations will lose points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points wins the House Cup." She explained the 4 houses: Gryffindor for the brave, Slytherin for the ambitious, Ravenclaw for the clever, Hufflepuff for the loyal. The sorting ceremony will take place in the Great Hall in front of the entire school. "I suggest you smarten up as best you can." She left. The first years waited in nervous silence. "How do they sort us?" Ron whispered. "Fred said it hurts." "Your brother was lying," Hermione said. "The sorting hat reads your thoughts and determines which house suits you best. It's explained in Hogwarts, a history. You've memorized that too?" "Of course I have." The doors to the Great Hall opened. McGonagall led them inside. The hall was magnificent. 4 long tables filled with students, all watching the first years enter. Thousands of candles floating in midair. And above, the ceiling showed the night sky, stars twinkling as if the roof didn't exist. "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside," Hermione whispered. "I read about it in Hogwarts, a history. Yes, we know," Ron said. But he was grinning. At the front of the hall, a stool held an old patched wizard's hat. As they watched, it opened its mouth and began to sing. Harry barely heard the words. He was scanning the staff table. Dumbledore sat in the center, unmistakable with his silver beard and half-moon spectacles. Next to him sat a professor with a purple turban. Then a woman who looked like she could be McGonagall's sister. And at the end, a man with greasy black hair, sallow skin, and black robes. Professor Snape, former Death Eater according to Remus, who'd been given a second chance by Dumbledore, brilliant potions master, and head of Slytherin House. Snape's black eyes met Harry's across the hall. Something flickered in them. Recognition. Hatred. Something else Harry couldn't identify. Then McGonagall began calling names. Abbott, Hannah, Hufflepuff, Bones, Susan, Hufflepuff, Boot, Terry, Ravenclaw, Granger, Hermione. Hermione walked to the stool, her bushy hair bouncing with each step. McGonagall placed the hat on her head. It sat there for nearly 4 minutes. A hat stall, someone whispered. Finally, Gryffindor. Hermione walked to the Gryffindor table, looking relieved and proud. She caught Harry's eye and smiled. More names. Longbottom Neville went to Gryffindor. Malfoy Draco. The boy from Madame Malkin's went to Slytherin immediately. Parkinson Pansy, also Slytherin. Potter, Harry. Harry walked to the stool, very aware that every eye in the hall was on him. He sat. McGonagall placed the hat on his head, and it slipped down over his eyes. Well, 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 a small voice said in his ear. Harry Potter, I've been waiting for you. Hello, Harry thought. Interesting. Very interesting. You've been trained well. Defense theory, creature identification, cautious thinking. Remus Lupin's influence is clear. You do well in Ravenclaw, Mr. Potter. That love of learning is genuine. I do love learning, but I'm not sure Ravenclaw is right for me. No? Where do you see yourself? Harry thought about it. About Remus's stories of the Marauders. About his parents in Gryffindor. About Hermione, already sorted there. I think I'm like my parents. I want to be brave. I want to protect people. Brave, yes. That's clear. Protective. Absolutely. But you're also cautious in ways your father never was. James Potter was reckless. You calculate risks before acting. That's not Gryffindor's typical mode. But I still act. I don't let fear stop me. I just prepare first. Excellent point. And that preparation makes your bravery more effective, doesn't it? You're a complete Gryffindor. Harry Potter. Brave and wise. That's rare. The hat paused. Very well. Better be Gryffindor. The last word rang out across the hall. The Gryffindor table exploded with cheers. Harry walked over, still slightly dazed, and sat next to Hermione. We're in the same house, she said happily. We are. Ron joined them minutes later, Gryffindor, and slid into the seat across from them. We're all together, Ron said. That's brilliant. The sorting concluded. Dumbledore stood to make his announcements. Welcoming speech, warnings about the Forbidden Forest and the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side. Out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. And an odd mention that the defense against the dark arts position was filled by Professor Quirrell. Then the feast appeared. Roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, chips, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and more food than Harry had ever seen in one place. This is amazing, Ron said, loading his plate. Harry ate mechanically, his mind on other things. He was at Hogwarts, in Gryffindor, with Hermione and Ron, starting his magical education properly. And Remus was alone in the cottage, dealing with the full moon that was only 3 days away. Their first week of classes established patterns that would define their Hogwarts careers. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall was rigorous and exacting. She demonstrated turning her desk into a pig and back, then assigned them to turn matches into needles. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she said sternly. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You have been warned. Hermione turned her match into a perfect needle on her third attempt. Harry's match went silver and pointed but retained a wooden texture. Ron's match merely smoldered. Charms with Professor Flitwick was more encouraging. The tiny professor squeaked with excitement when he reached Harry's name on the register. The famous Harry Potter, but treated him no differently than other students thereafter. Herbology with Professor Sprout involved repotting mandrakes while wearing earmuffs to avoid their deadly cries. History of magic with Professor Binns, a ghost, was monumentally boring. He droned on about goblin rebellions in a voice that could lull anyone to sleep. But defense against the dark arts with Professor Quirrell was a profound disappointment. The classroom reeked of garlic. Quirrell stuttered constantly, jumped at loud noises, and seemed terrified of his own subject. His first lesson consisted entirely of reading from the textbook in a trembling voice. This is useless," Hermione whispered to Harry as Quirrell stammered through a passage about identifying dark creatures. "We could be learning actual defensive spells." "We'll practice ourselves," Harry whispered back. "Remus taught us theory. We just need wands to practice properly." They started meeting in empty classrooms after dinner. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Neville, who detached himself to their group after Harry helped him find his toad, practicing wand movements and incantations from their textbooks. "The disarming charm is Expelliarmus," Hermione read. "Wand movement is a forward jab, used to knock your opponent's wand out of their hand." Hermione's spell produced red sparks. Harry's produced sparks and a pulling sensation. Ron's wand merely whistled. "You're thinking too much, Ron," Harry said. "The intent matters. You're not trying to hit your opponent. You're trying to disarm them specifically. Focus on the wand leaving their hand." Ron tried again. This time his spell worked, sending Neville's wand flying across the room. "Brilliant," Neville said, retrieving his wand. "Harry, how'd you know that? Intent shapes magic as much as words and movements. You need all three working together." They practiced until curfew, then returned to Gryffindor Tower through the portrait hole. Password: Caput Draconis. The common room was warm and crowded with older students. Harry pulled out parchment to write his weekly letter to Remus. "Dear Remus, first week done. Classes are mostly good. Transfiguration is challenging, but fascinating. Charms is fun. Herbology is practical. Defense is terrible. Professor Quirrell is scared of his own shadow and stutters constantly. We're teaching ourselves defensive spells in empty classrooms because his lessons are useless. Hermione's in Gryffindor with me. So is a boy named Ron Weasley. You'd like him. He's funny and loyal even if he doesn't study as much as Hermione thinks he should. And Neville Longbottom. His parents were tortured by Bellatrix Lestrange. He's quiet but getting braver. How are you? Is the cottage holding up? Mrs. Fig sent me a letter saying she checked on you after the last full moon. She said you were recovering well, which I know means you were hurt but don't want me to worry. Please take care of yourself. I miss you. Hogwarts is brilliant, but it doesn't feel like home yet. Love, Harry." The potions problem. Potions class on Friday afternoon was their first with the Slytherins. Harry sat with Hermione at a desk in the dungeons waiting for Professor Snape to arrive. The door banged open. Snape swept into the room like a particularly malevolent bat, his black robes billowing behind him. He took roll in a bored voice, pausing at Harry's name. "Ah, yes. Harry Potter, our new celebrity." The Slytherins sniggered. Hermione's hand found Harry's under the desk, squeezing in warning. "Don't react." Snape began his speech about the subtle art of potion making. Harry listened attentively, taking notes. It was actually interesting. Snape's description of bottling fame, brewing glory, and putting a stopper in death was poetic, if melodramatic. Then Snape's eyes fixed on Harry. "Potter. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry knew this. Remus had covered basic potion theory extensively. "The draught of living death, sir. A powerful sleeping potion." Snape's expression flickered. He'd expected ignorance. "Where would you look if I asked you to find me a bezoar?" "The stomach of a goat, sir. It's an antidote to most poisons." "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant, sir, also called aconite, highly poisonous but useful in small doses for several potions." Harry paused. "Including the wolfsbane potion, which allows werewolves to keep their minds during transformation." The room went silent. Snape stared at Harry with an expression that might have been surprise, anger, or something else entirely. 5 points from Gryffindor, Potter, for your cheek." "Sir, I was answering your questions." "Another 5 points for talking back. I asked for information, not a lecture on werewolf welfare." Snape's voice was cold. "Your guardian's condition is not relevant to this class." Harry's temper flared. "You asked about aconite's uses. The wolfsbane potion is its most significant modern application." Saturday evening, my office. Snape turned away. "And if you continue to display the same arrogance your father showed in these very dungeons, you will find this class very difficult indeed." Harry forced himself silent. Hermione squeezed his hand again, harder this time. Snape assigned them to brew a simple cure for boils potion. Harry followed the instructions precisely, chopping ingredients with the careful precision Remus had taught him. Hermione's potion turned pink and produced the correct amount of steam. Harry's was perhaps a shade darker, but otherwise acceptable. Neville's potion exploded, covering him in boils. Snape vanished the mess with a contemptuous wave of his wand. Longbottom, you've managed to melt Finch Fletchley's cauldron? 5 points from Gryffindor. Potter, Snape examined Harry's potion with obvious suspicion. Adequate. No points awarded. After class, Ron exploded. That was completely unfair. You answered his questions correctly. He hates me because I look like my father, Harry said flatly. Remus warned me. James Potter bullied Snape at school. Snape can't separate me from my father, so he takes out his hatred on me. That's not right. It's reality. I'll serve the detention, keep my head down in potions, and learn what I can despite his hostility. Harry's voice was calm despite his anger. Getting angry won't help. Snape has power. I don't. Yet. You sound like Remus, Hermione observed. Remus deals with unjust authority constantly. He's taught me how to survive it. The detention that Saturday involved organizing Snape's ingredient stores, a tedious task that took 3 hours. Snape worked at his desk, grading essays, occasionally glancing at Harry with an unreadable expression. Finally, as Harry was finishing, Snape spoke. Your guardian taught you potion theory. It wasn't a question, but Harry answered anyway. Yes, sir. Lupin was competent at potions. Not brilliant, but competent. If he taught you properly, you should achieve acceptable marks at minimum. Snape paused. Your father was naturally talented at potions, but lazy. He relied on others, usually your mother, to refine his work. If you've inherited his laziness along with his face, you'll struggle. I'm not lazy, sir. We shall see. Snape returned to his grading. You're dismissed. Harry left, confused. Was that almost respect? Or just Snape comparing him to James and finding him marginally less objectionable? He wrote to Remus about it that night. Snape hates me, as you predicted. But he's not just cruel. He's complicated. He expects me to be James. When I'm not, he doesn't know what to do with me. It's strange. Remus's response came 2 days later. Severus Snape is a brilliant wizard who has suffered greatly. Your father and Sirius tormented him mercilessly during school. I should have stopped them and didn't. That failure haunts me. Snape has every right to hate our generation. The fact that he's merely cold to you rather than actively cruel is progress. Be patient with him. And Harry, don't let his hostility make you doubt yourself. You're not James. You're you. That's enough. Halloween. October 31st arrived with decorated pumpkins floating through the Great Hall and a feast that rivaled the start-of-term banquet. Harry had been dreading this day. 10 years ago, his parents had died. Voldemort had tried to kill him. Everything had changed. Remus's letter that morning had been gentle. Today is difficult. Remember that James and Lily loved you. Remember that their sacrifice gave you life. Grief is natural. So is joy. Let yourself feel both. Harry was picking at his treacle tart when Professor Quirrell burst into the hall. Troll, he screamed. Troll in the dungeons. Thought you ought to know. Dumbledore's voice boomed over the chaos. Prefects, lead your houses back to dormitories immediately. Harry stood to follow, then stopped. Where's Hermione? She's not here. She left after charms. Neville said. Ron made a joke about her being a know-it-all. She was crying. I didn't mean. She's in the bathroom, Harry said with certainty. She doesn't know about the troll. We have to tell a teacher. There's no time. Come on. They ran toward the girls' bathroom on the 2nd floor, dodging prefects and following the smell, like a public toilet mixed with rotting garbage. Harry's defensive training kicked in automatically. Assess the threat. Identify escape routes. Prepare for confrontation. They found the troll in the bathroom. 12 feet tall, dull gray skin, massive club raised high, and Hermione, pressed against the sinks, frozen with terror. Hermione, Harry shouted. Move. The troll turned toward them. Harry's mind raced through options. They were first years. They knew almost no offensive magic. Their best spells were Lumos and maybe Wingardium Leviosa. Ron, aim for the club. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. The club jerked upward out of the troll's grip, hovered for a moment, then crashed down on the creature's head. The troll swayed, eyes rolling back, and collapsed with a floor-shaking thud. Harry ran to Hermione. "Are you hurt?" "No, no, I'm fine, Harry, you came for me." Harry helped her stand. "You're our friend. We don't leave friends behind." Professors arrived moments later. McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell. McGonagall looked furious. "What on earth were you thinking? You could have been killed." "It was my fault, Professor," Hermione said quickly. "I went looking for the troll. I thought I could handle it because I'd read about trolls. Harry and Ron came to find me. They saved my life." 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor, Miss Granger. Foolish behavior, however well-intentioned. But you three... She looked at Harry, Ron, and Neville, who'd followed despite his fear. "Will each receive 10 points for defeating a fully grown mountain troll. Sheer dumb luck protects fools, but not many first years could do what you did. Now, all of you, return to your dormitories immediately." They left. But Harry noticed something. As they passed, Snape was limping. His robes were torn, and beneath them, Harry glimpsed what looked like a bite mark. Later, in the common room, Harry pulled Ron and Hermione aside. "Did you see Snape's leg?" "He was limping," Hermione confirmed. "And his robes were torn. Something bit him." "What could bite a professor?" Ron asked. Harry remembered Dumbledore's warning at the start of term feast. "The third-floor corridor, off limits to those who didn't wish to die." "Whatever's on the third floor," Harry said slowly. "The troll was a distraction. Someone tried to get past whatever's being guarded while everyone was dealing with the troll. And Snape went to stop them, or to try stealing it himself." "That's a serious accusation," Hermione said. "You're saying Professor Snape might be a thief?" "I'm saying someone tried to steal something tonight, and Snape was involved somehow." Harry's mind worked through the implications. "We need to find out what's being protected, and why." Thus began their investigation into the mystery of the third floor, an investigation that would define their first year at Hogwarts, and test everything Remus had taught Harry about defensive thinking, preparation, and knowing when rules needed to be broken. The investigation, over the next 2 months, Harry, Hermione, and Ron investigated the third-floor corridor mystery with increasing urgency. Hermione discovered the answer in the library on a cold November afternoon. She rushed into the common room with ancient runes and their applications open to a marked page. "The Philosopher's Stone," she announced, dropping the book on the table where Harry and Ron were attempting transfiguration homework. "That's what's being protected." Harry looked up from his match, which he'd been trying to turn into a needle. "What's the Philosopher's Stone?" "A legendary alchemical substance created by Nicholas Flamel. It can turn any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal." Hermione was nearly vibrating with excitement. Flamel is 665 years old, and according to this article from last month, she pulled out a Daily Prophet clipping. There was a break-in at Gringotts. Vault 713. It was emptied earlier that same day. Harry remembered suddenly. "I was at Gringotts that day. I saw Hagrid. He said he was picking something up for Dumbledore, from a high-security vault. Dumbledore moved the stone from Gringotts to Hogwarts because someone tried to steal it," Ron said slowly. "And that someone is still trying to steal it. That's why the three-headed dog is there. That's why Snape got bitten." "We don't know it was Snape trying to steal it," Hermione pointed out. "He might have been trying to stop whoever it was." About Snape's hostility, but also his strange almost protection. About the detention where Snape had acknowledged that Remus taught well. About the complicated hatred that wasn't quite pure. "We need more information," Harry decided. "Hermione, find out everything you can about Flamel and the stone. Ron, see if your brothers know anything about what kind of protections might be guarding it. I'll write to Remus. He might know something about Dumbledore's security measures." They worked through Christmas break, even as most students went home. Harry stayed at Hogwarts. He'd written to Remus explaining that he wanted to use the library's resources, which was partially true. The whole truth was that investigating kept his mind off the fact that this was his first Christmas away from Remus. On Christmas morning, Harry woke to find presents at the foot of his bed. One was clearly from Remus, a book titled Advanced Defensive Theory for Practical Application. With a note, "Read this carefully. The section on magical protections is particularly relevant. I'm proud of you. R.R." The other presents included a hand-knitted jumper from Mrs. Weasley. Ron had mentioned Harry was staying at school, sweets from Hermione, and a package with no note. Inside was silvery fabric that slithered through Harry's fingers like water. That's an invisibility cloak, Ron breathed. Those are really rare. Wonder who sent it. A note fell from the folds. Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. Harry stared at the cloak. His father's, James Potter, had owned an invisibility cloak and used it for marauder mischief. And someone, Dumbledore, Harry suspected from the handwriting, thought Harry should have it now. That night, Harry used the cloak to explore the castle. The freedom of invisible movement was intoxicating. He could go anywhere, see anything, completely undetected. He found himself in the library's restricted section, searching for information about the stone. Found references to Flamel, to the protections that might guard such an artifact, to the implications of immortality magic. On his way back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry got lost. He ducked into an empty classroom to consult the map Hermione had drawn of the castle, and found himself facing a magnificent mirror. Gold frame, ornate carvings, an inscription across the top, Erisid stra evru, oit ube kafru oit, on Woshi. Harry approached, looked into the mirror, and stopped breathing. The reflection showed Harry, but not alone. Behind him stood a man with messy black hair and glasses, a woman with red hair and green eyes like Harry's. His parents, James and Lily Potter, alive, whole, smiling at him. James's hand rested on Harry's shoulder. Lily's touched his hair, the way Remus did when Harry was upset. They weren't ghosts. They were solid, real, present. Harry reached toward the mirror. His hand met cold glass. His parents didn't move. They're not really there, a voice said behind him. Harry spun. Dumbledore stood in the doorway, wearing a dressing gown covered in stars. I know, Harry said quietly. It's a mirror. It shows... He looked at the inscription again, reading it backward. It shows what we desire, not reality. Precisely. The mirror of Erised shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. Dumbledore moved closer. What do you see, Harry? My parents. Alive. With me. Harry's voice cracked. I never knew them. I have Remus, and I love him, but I want to know what it would have been like. To have them. A natural desire, one I think your parents would be touched by. Dumbledore gazed at the mirror. I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. One can never have enough socks. Or at least, not the whole truth. But he didn't press. Can I come back? To see them? The mirror will be moved tomorrow. I ask you not to go looking for it, Harry. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. You have people who love you, Remus, Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley. Don't lose them by mourning what you never had. Harry nodded slowly. Remus said something similar once, that grief is natural, but so is joy. That I should let myself feel both. Remus is a wise man, perhaps wiser than I am about such things. Dumbledore smiled. He has raised you well, Harry. James and Lily would be very proud of the person you're becoming. How do you know? You didn't know me when I was with the Dursleys, but I know you now. I see a young man who thinks before acting, who protects his friends, who questions authority when authority is wrong. That's precisely who James and Lily hoped you'd become. Dumbledore paused, though perhaps with less tendency toward unauthorized nighttime wandering. Harry flushed. You knew I'd be exploring? I gave you an invisibility cloak on Christmas, Harry. What did I expect you to do with it? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Just be careful. Hogwarts is generally safe, but there are still dangers for the unwary. February, Remus's visit. In mid-February, Dumbledore sent word that Harry had a visitor. Harry found Remus waiting in a small side chamber off the entrance hall, looking tired but well. Remus, Harry hugged him fiercely. What are you doing here? Dumbledore invited me to consult on some defensive wards. Since I was here anyway, I thought I'd check on you. Remus pulled back, studying Harry's face. You look well, older somehow. I'm learning actual magic now. It's different from theory. I imagine it is. Walk with me? I have a few hours before I need to return. They walked the grounds despite the February cold. Harry told Remus about classes, about Ron and Hermione, about the troll and Snape's hostility, and the mystery of the stone. We think someone's trying to steal it, Harry concluded. We don't know who, but Snape was injured trying to get past the three-headed dog guarding the trapdoor. Harry. Remus stopped walking. That's a serious accusation. Are you certain? No. That's why I said we think. But something's happening, Remus. Something dangerous. And I need to know, if it comes down to it, if someone's really trying to steal the stone. Should I intervene? Remus was quiet for a long moment. What have I always taught you about defensive situations? Assess the threat. Identify your capabilities. Know when to fight and when to get help. You've had 7 months of magical education. Even with all the preparation I gave you, you're not equipped to fight an adult dark wizard. Remus knelt to Harry's level. If you genuinely believe someone is trying to steal the stone, tell a professor. Tell Dumbledore. Let the adults handle it. But what if there isn't time? What if? Then you prioritize survival over heroics. You protect yourself and your friends. You get out safely and alert people who can actually stop whatever's happening. Remus's voice was firm. I did not raise you to throw your life away playing hero, Harry. I raised you to think strategically and stay alive. Promise me you'll do that. I promise to try. That's not the same as promising to do it. I know. But it's the only promise I can honestly make. Remus sighed, but nodded. You're so much like your father. And your mother. They both had this frustrating tendency to do the right thing regardless of personal risk. He pulled Harry into another hug. Just be careful. Please. I can't lose you too. You won't lose me. I'm careful. You taught me how. They spent the rest of Remus's visit discussing lighter topics. Harry's classes, Hermione's academic intensity, Ron's chess strategies. But underneath was the awareness that something dangerous was coming. And Harry might face it despite all Remus's attempts to prepare him for cautious defense rather than reckless heroism. May, the decision, reached its crisis point in late May. Harry, wearing the invisibility cloak, had been monitoring the third-floor corridor regularly. On May 24th, he saw Professor Quirrell enter, not hesitantly, as if lost, but purposefully. Quirrell glanced around nervously, then slipped through the forbidden door. Harry followed. The corridor was dark and smelled like dog. Harry moved silently, every defensive instinct Remus had trained into him on high alert. At the end of the corridor, he found the door ajar. Inside, a massive three-headed dog slept, lulled by music from a harp playing itself, and beneath the dog's paws, a trapdoor, standing open. Quirrell had gone down, was going down right now. Going after the stone. Harry's mind raced through options. Run to find a professor. Follow Quirrell and observe. Ignore the whole thing and go back to the dormitory. The defensive choice was clear. Get help. Alert Dumbledore. Let the adults handle it. But Hermione's research had been clear. The stone could grant immortality, and the only person who needed immortality was someone who'd lost their body but might return if given the chance. Voldemort. If Quirrell was working for Voldemort, if Voldemort was about to get the stone, then waiting might mean it was too late. Harry ran back to Gryffindor Tower. Hermione, Ron, we need to talk. Now. He explained what he'd seen. Hermione went pale. Ron's freckles stood out sharply against his skin. We need to tell McGonagall, Hermione said immediately. She's gone to London with Dumbledore. Ministry meeting. I heard them talking about it this morning. Harry's voice was urgent. Quirrell chose tonight because Dumbledore's away. By the time we find another professor and convince them this isn't a student's overactive imagination, it might be too late. So what are you suggesting? Ron asked, though his expression said he already knew. We go down, we stop Quirrell, we protect the stone until the professor's return. We're first years. I know what we are, but I also know what's at stake. If Voldemort gets the stone, he comes back. Fully. And everyone who fought to stop him the first time did it for nothing. Harry looked at them both. I'm going down. You don't have to come. But I have to try. Hermione and Ron exchanged a long look. We're coming, Hermione said finally. But Harry, this time if there's a chance to get help, we take it. Agreed? Agreed. They descended through the trapdoor, landing on something soft and vine-like that immediately began wrapping around their legs. Devil's snare, Hermione shouted. Don't move, it hates light, lumos solem. Bright light erupted from her wand. The plant recoiled, dropping them onto the floor below. Nicely done, Harry said. The next chamber held hundreds of flying keys and a locked door. Harry spotted the correct key, large, old-fashioned, blue with a bent wing, and mounted the broomstick someone had conveniently left. His seeker instincts kicked in. He'd spent months practicing flying in secret, using Ron's borrowed broom. The key tried to evade, but Harry was faster. He caught it in under 2 minutes. Brilliant flying, Ron said as they passed through the door. The next chamber held a giant chess set. Ron's eyes lit up. I know chess. Let me handle this. They positioned themselves as pieces. Harry as a bishop, Hermione as a castle, Ron as a knight. Ron directed them with absolute authority, sacrificing pieces strategically, setting up combinations Harry couldn't follow but trusted completely. When the opposing queen cornered Ron's knight, Ron made a choice. Harry, when I move, you'll have 3 spaces to checkmate the king. Do it. Ron, no. Do it. The queen moved, struck Ron hard. He fell, unconscious. Harry, fighting panic, moved his bishop. Checkmate. The opposing king threw down his sword. They'd won. Hermione ran to Ron. He's breathing. Knocked out, not dead. We need to keep going, Harry said, hating himself for it. Hermione, stay with Ron. Absolutely not. We're doing this together. Hermione stood. Ron would want us to stop Quirrell. The final chamber held the mirror of Erised and Professor Quirrell. But Quirrell wasn't stuttering anymore. His voice was cold, confident, utterly changed. Potter, I wondered when you'd arrive. Step away from the mirror. I can't. I can see myself presenting the stone to my master, but I can't work out how to get it. Quirrell's eyes were wild. The mirror's magic is clever. It won't respond to greed. Perhaps you should try, Potter. The boy who lived might be pure enough. Harry, don't, Hermione warned. But Harry approached the mirror, thinking desperately about what Remus would do, assess the situation, identify advantages, use everything available. He looked into the mirror, saw himself with his parents, with Remus, with his friends. All safe, all alive, all together. His reflection smiled, reached into its pocket, pulled out a blood-red stone. Winked, put it back. Harry felt sudden weight in his real pocket. The stone. He had the stone. Well? Quirrell demanded. What do you see? I see myself winning the House Cup for Gryffindor, Harry lied, backing away slowly. His hand closed around the stone in his pocket. He's lying, a cold, high voice said, a voice that made Harry's scar explode with pain. Quirrell began unwrapping his turban. Where the back of his head should be was a face, flat, snake-like, with red eyes and slits for nostrils. Voldemort. Harry Potter. The face hissed. The boy who lived. How touching that you've come to stop me personally. Harry couldn't move. This was Voldemort, the dark wizard who'd murdered his parents, who'd tried to murder him, who Remus still had nightmares about. Give me the stone, Potter, and I might let you live. Harry's defensive training kicked in automatically. Assess. Quirrell possesses Voldemort, making him extremely dangerous but also dependent on Quirrell's body. Advantages. Harry has the stone, has Hermione as backup, knows the terrain. Disadvantages. Massively outmatched in magical power. Strategy. Delay. Stall. Look for opportunities. Why do you need the stone? Harry asked, his mind racing. You're already immortal. You survived being destroyed. I am less than spirit, less than the meanest ghost, Voldemort spat. The stone will restore me. Give me a body again. Make me whole. And then, what? You killed my parents. You tried to kill me. What makes you think I'd ever help you? Because if you don't, I'll kill your little friend first. Quirrell's wand pointed at Hermione. Crucio, Protego. Harry's shield charm wasn't strong enough to block an unforgivable, but it deflected it slightly. Hermione screamed but remained conscious. Years of preparation crystallized into instinct. Harry dropped low, rolled behind a pillar. Defensive movement, never stand still in a fight. Stupefy. The stunning spell wasn't powerful enough to affect Quirrell, but it forced him to shield, buying seconds. Hermione, run! Get help! I'm not leaving you. That's an order. Run. Quirrell started to follow, but Harry threw himself forward, grabbing Quirrell's arm. Quirrell screamed. His hand was burning where Harry touched him. Blistering, smoking, the smell of cooking flesh filling the chamber. What is this magic? Voldemort shrieked. Harry didn't understand it either, but he held on. Quirrell tried to throw him off, but every point of contact caused more burning. Harry grabbed Quirrell's face with both hands. You killed my parents, Harry said. His voice was shaking but clear. You destroyed Remus's life. You tried to murder me when I was a baby. And you failed. You'll always fail. Because you don't understand what makes people fight. You don't understand love. Quirrell's face began to crack and crumble where Harry touched him. Voldemort's spirit shrieked, an inhuman sound of rage and agony, and abandoned Quirrell's body. Dark smoke streamed past Harry, through the chamber, disappearing. Quirrell collapsed, dead or dying. Harry stumbled backward, the stone falling from his pocket, and collapsed. The hospital wing. Harry woke 3 days later in the hospital wing. The first thing he saw was Remus, asleep in a chair beside his bed. Remus looked terrible, gray-faced, exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years. "Remus," Harry croaked. Remus woke immediately. "Harry, thank God, Harry." His voice broke. He grabbed Harry's hand, holding it like he'd never let go. "You stopped him. You stopped Voldemort. You could have died. I'm sorry. I know I promised to get help, but there wasn't time. I know." Hermione explained everything. Remus's grip tightened. "Harry, you saved the stone. You prevented Voldemort's return. You protected your friends. You did exactly what I raised you to do. You thought strategically, used your advantages, survived. I'm so proud of you, and so furious that you were in that situation at all." "Is Hermione okay?" "Ron?" "Both fine. Ron has a headache, but is otherwise unharmed. Hermione barely left your side until I arrived." Remus's expression was complicated. "Dumbledore wants to talk to you when you're ready. He has questions about how you defeated Quirrell. I don't know how I did it. Touching him made him burn, like my skin was poisonous to him." "Your mother's protection," Dumbledore's voice said from the doorway. "May I come in?" Remus nodded stiffly. Dumbledore entered, looking older and sadder than Harry had ever seen him. "Harry, what you did was extraordinarily brave and extraordinarily foolish in equal measure. You saved the stone. You also nearly died." Dumbledore sat in a chair across from Remus. "I owe you an explanation. About the protection that saved you." He explained Lily's sacrifice, how her love had created a protection in Harry's blood, how that protection lived in his skin, his very being, how Quirrell, possessed by Voldemort who'd killed Lily, couldn't bear to touch someone so deeply marked by her love. "The protection is still active," Dumbledore said. "It will fade when you turn 17, but until then, you carry your mother's love as a shield. It's the most powerful magic I know." "You knew about this?" "I knew about the blood protection that required your annual visits to the Dursleys. I didn't know it would protect you through physical contact." Remus's voice was careful. "Dumbledore, you said the protection fades at 17. What happens then?" "Which is why," Dumbledore looked at Harry directly, "I'm glad Remus has been training you. The defensive thinking you displayed in that chamber, the strategic awareness, the decision to delay rather than attack, those instincts saved your life as much as your mother's love did. I just did what Remus taught me, which is precisely what James and Lily hoped someone would teach you." Dumbledore stood. "Rest, Harry. When you're recovered, we'll discuss what happened in more detail. But for now, you're safe. Voldemort is gone again, at least temporarily, and thanks to you, he won't be returning anytime soon." After Dumbledore left, Harry and Remus sat in silence for a long moment. "You're not angry?" Harry asked finally. "I'm angry at the situation. I'm angry that you had to face that. I'm angry at Dumbledore for putting the stone in a school full of children." Remus's voice was quiet. "But I'm not angry at you. You made the best choices you could with the information you had. You survived. That's what matters. In the mirror, before Quirrell came, they looked so real. What were they doing? Standing with me, with you, all of us together." Harry's voice caught. "I wanted that so badly. To have them back, to know them. I know." Remus pulled Harry into a careful hug, mindful of his injuries. "I wish I could give that to you. But Harry, you do know them. You have your father's courage and your mother's heart. You have their love, even if you don't have their presence. That has to be enough." "I have you. That's more than enough." They stayed like that until Madame Pomfrey bustled over, insisting that Harry needed rest and Remus needed to either sleep in a proper bed or leave the hospital wing entirely. The end-of-year feast was subdued. Everyone knew something had happened. Professor Quirrell was dead. Harry Potter had spent 3 days unconscious in the hospital wing. And the rumor mill had gone into overdrive. Dumbledore stood to make his announcements. "Another year has passed, and before we begin the House Cup presentations, I want to address recent events." His voice was grave. "You have all heard rumors. Some are true. Professor Quirrell did attempt to steal a valuable magical artifact from this school. He was stopped by the efforts of 3 first-year students, who displayed remarkable courage and intelligence. Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ronald Weasley prevented a great evil from returning to power. They are heroes in the truest sense. The hall erupted in whispers. Harry, sitting at the Gryffindor table between Hermione and Ron, wished he could disappear. However, Dumbledore continued, they are also children who should never have been in that situation. The artifact in question has been destroyed. The protections that failed will be examined, and I personally apologize to the students and staff of Hogwarts for allowing such danger within these walls. He paused, looking directly at Harry. Sometimes the adults fail to protect the children they're responsible for. When that happens, it falls to the children to protect themselves and each other. Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, and Mr. Weasley did so with exemplary skill. They have my profound gratitude and respect. The hall was silent. Now, to the House Cup. The points stand thus. In 4th place, Gryffindor with 312 points. 3rd place, Hufflepuff with 352 points. 2nd place, Ravenclaw with 426 points. And in 1st place, Slytherin with 472 points. However, Dumbledore said, certain recent events must be taken into account. I have some last-minute points to award. The hall went silent again. To Miss Hermione Granger, for the cool use of intellect in the face of danger, 50 points. The Gryffindor table erupted. Hermione went bright red. To Mr. Ronald Weasley, for the best-played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, 50 points. To Mr. Harry Potter, for pure nerve and outstanding courage, and for strategic thinking that saved his life and the lives of his friends, 60 points. Harry glanced at the points hourglasses. Gryffindor was now tied with Slytherin at 472 points. And finally, Dumbledore said, I wish to award points to someone who is not a student, but whose teaching proved invaluable in preparing Mr. Potter for the challenges he faced. Professor McGonagall, would you please note that 20 points are awarded to Gryffindor House in recognition of Remus Lupin's extraordinary guardianship and defensive instruction. The hall erupted in confusion and then applause. No one had ever heard of points being awarded for someone who wasn't even a student, which means, Dumbledore said, smiling now, that Gryffindor wins the House Cup with 492 points. The Gryffindor table exploded with celebration. Red and gold banners replaced the Slytherin green. Ron was shouting incoherently. Hermione was crying with joy. Harry felt something in his chest expand. Pride, relief, joy, and the bittersweet knowledge that this year was ending and next year would bring new challenges. But for now, they'd won. They'd survived. They'd stopped Voldemort together. That was enough. King's Cross, platform 9 3/4, was chaos. Families collecting children, trunks being loaded onto trolleys, owls hooting goodbye to Hogwarts. Harry stood with his trunk, scanning the crowd for Remus, found him near the barrier, looking thinner than when Harry had last seen him, but smiling. Remus, Harry ran to him, abandoning his trunk entirely. Remus caught him, hugged him tightly. Hello, Harry. Welcome home. I missed you so much. I missed you too. Every single day. Remus pulled back, examining Harry's face. You look older, more confident. Hogwarts has been good for you. It's been terrifying and brilliant in equal measure. Hermione approached with her parents. Mr. Lupin, thank you for everything this year. Your training saved Harry's life. Harry's thinking saved his life, Remus corrected. But I appreciate the sentiment, Hermione. Will you be continuing lessons this summer? If you'll have me. Harry would be impossible to live with if he didn't have someone to argue magical theory with. The Grangers laughed. Mr. Granger shook Remus's hand. Thank you for looking after both of them. I understand things got rather dangerous this year. More dangerous than I would have liked, Remus admitted. But they handled it remarkably well. Ron's family appeared. A crowd of red-haired Weasleys all talking at once. Mrs. Weasley hugged Harry before he could protest. You saved my Ron, you wonderful boy. You must come to the Burrow this summer, both of you. We'll have you for dinner. Thank you, Mrs. Weasley, Remus said diplomatically. We'd be delighted. After goodbyes were said and promises made to write, Remus and Harry walked toward the Muggle side of the station. How was the full moon last week? Harry asked quietly. Painful but manageable. Mrs. Fig checked on me the next morning. And Dumbledore sent Wolfsbane for this month, so I'll be myself during the transformation. Remus paused. Harry, I need to tell you something. Dumbledore has offered me a position at Hogwarts, defense against the dark arts professor. Harry stopped walking. What? Starting next year, he was impressed by the training you'd received, and he believes, rightly, that students deserve better than what Quirrell provided. He's offering me the position on a trial basis. Remus looked uncertain. It would mean stable income, access to Wolfsbane, and being close to you during the school year. But it means you'd have to be open about being a werewolf. The students would know. Their parents would know. Harry understood the implications immediately. You'd face discrimination from people who think you're dangerous. Yes, and I'd be teaching your year, which might be awkward. Will you take it? It's your school too. How would you feel about me being there? About having Remus clothes? About being able to see him between classes? To talk to him about investigations and mysteries and the complexities of Hogwarts politics? About other students seeing Remus as Harry saw him? Brilliant, kind, worthy of respect? I think you should take it, Harry said firmly. You're the best defense teacher anyone could have. You taught me everything that kept me alive this year. Other students deserve that. And if anyone has a problem with your lycanthropy, they're idiots. Remus smiled, genuine, warm, proud. You sound very certain. I am certain. Remus, you're incredible at this, and I want people to see that. I want them to see what I see. That being a werewolf doesn't define you. Your teaching does. Your kindness does. The way you've raised me does. All right, I'll accept the position. Remus pulled Harry close as they walked. Thank you for believing in me when I struggle to believe in myself. It looked exactly as Harry remembered, slightly shabby, full of books, wards humming with protective magic. Home. That night, Harry unpacked his trunk while Remus made dinner. He found the photo album Hagrid had given him at the end of term, pictures of his parents, young and happy and alive. He brought it downstairs. Remus, will you tell me about them? Everything you remember? Remus sat down, and they went through the album together. James on his broomstick, showing off. Lily laughing at something off camera. The Marauders together. James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter, arms around each other, grinning like they owned the world. Your father was brilliant and arrogant in equal measure, Remus said, pointing to a photo of James. He thought rules were suggestions. He hexed people who annoyed him. He was impossible to argue with when he'd decided something. But he was the best friend I ever had. When he found out I was a werewolf, he didn't flinch. He just asked what he could do to help. That was James. Loyal to the point of stupidity sometimes. And my mom? She was everything good. Smart, brave, funny, fierce when someone she loved was threatened. She saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. She saw past James's arrogance to the good person underneath. She loved completely, without reservation. Remus's voice caught. She died protecting you. Never doubt that you were loved, Harry. Never doubt that. I don't doubt it. I have you. You've shown me what it means to be loved every day since you took me in. They sat like that, looking at photos of people who were gone but not forgotten, in a cottage full of books and magic, and the quiet certainty that they were exactly where they belonged. Outside, the moon rose over Yorkshire. In 3 days it would be full, and Remus would transform in the cellar, while Harry stayed safely upstairs. But tonight, they were just a father and son, home after a long year, preparing for whatever challenges the next year would bring. Remus? Harry asked as they closed the album. Yes, for choosing me when you didn't have to. For teaching me how to think and how to fight and how to be brave. For being my family. Harry, you've never been a burden. You've been the best thing that ever happened to me. Raising you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Remus smiled. And I can't wait to see what you do next year. Though I hope it's less dramatic than stopping Voldemort. I'll try. But knowing your luck, you'll find yourself in the middle of another adventure. Just promise me you'll be careful. I promise to try. That's the only promise I can honestly make. I know. You're your father's son. And your mother's. And... Remus paused. And mine. In all the ways that matter. Harry nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They sat together as darkness fell. Two people bound not by blood but by choice, preparing for a future that held both danger and possibility in equal measure. The boy who lived had survived his first year at Hogwarts, not through luck or prophecy, but through the lessons a werewolf had taught him about preparation, defense, and the strategic thinking that kept you alive when magic and courage weren't enough. And that legacy, the legacy of the moon, of careful preparation, of love that taught rather than just protected, would shape everything that came next. The end.